Hi, my name is Leah Day, and welcome to this casual cam about Duchess reins. You can see that she is finished, but I have one last little bit of machine stitching that I want to show you that I captured earlier today in video. So here it is. So I have finished the inside quilting of Duchess reins, and that was really the hardest and most time-consuming part. But I'm not done yet. I still have to finish off this little border. This is the outermost border, and it's a puffy line, and then a line that's going to be filled, and then another puffy line. Well, the problem is, if I tried to cut this off and bind right against this puffy line, this is trapuntoed, more than likely it would be really challenging to keep this under control and not have the border or the binding just go completely out of whack. So one thing I've done is just really quickly run this line of stitching. And you can see it's like just a wide basting stitch. I'm just moving very quickly back and forth to fill in this area so that I have about 1/4 of an inch of stability. So about like that. So I have 1/4 of an inch of stability through this area. What's going to happen is after I block the quilt and trim it, I'm going to end up trimming some of this. I'm going to leave 1/4 of an inch from this puffy edge, and that's going to be what gets bound. And the reason I'm stitching on this is so it's stable, so it's nice and strong. It's going to get totally covered up, so it doesn't matter if I cut my thread right here. It's no big deal. And of course it looks ugly, but don't worry about it. It's going to get totally covered up. Okay. So now at this point I have to figure out how I'm going to fill in this inner channel. And this is something that is kind of important for any type of quilt, and that is to use a design that you previously used in a similar space. And so inside the quilt, this is an inner channel that I have a very similar motif, and I'm going to run this back and forth. Basically they're just kind of arching moon shapes back and forth through that area, and it's going to fill it in quite nicely. I'm hoping, the one trick about it is I'm hoping it's not going to be super time consuming, because of course I'm really excited to be finishing this quilt and being done with it. I really don't want this border to take an exceptionally long amount of time, so I'm hoping that it'll go pretty quick. It's one of those things where I kind of planned this out and designed it this way from the beginning. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm super happy with the way I have to fill it now. I kind of wish that I had chosen something different on this edge so I wouldn't have to do this time-consuming design. But hopefully it's going to go pretty quick. You can see I'm just kind of bouncing back and forth. I'm going to zoom in real close because this is a tiny design. It's kind of hard to see. There we go. Of course, I just had a little thread issue, and rather than stop and fix it, I'm going to stitch over it a little bit. I don't feel like breaking thread right this second to go sort that out. Like I said, it's not that I'm being lazy, it's that I cannot fix every little thing on this quilt, and I'm okay with the imperfection. I've come to terms with that. So I'm just going to be bouncing back and forth like this through the entire channel, and it's 70 inches, which is going to be pretty time consuming. I have to kind of keep an eye on my scale, keep it consistent. I don't want these to suddenly start getting really wide. I also don't want them to suddenly start getting really close together. So I've got to just take it slow and be consistent and be patient. What helps is I've been listening to audiobooks while I do this. That kind of helps me maintain my focus. But really, this is probably going to be the most boring thing to do on this quilt. And, well, really, the whole thing has been very boring. You know, it's not a bad thing, but it's one of those things, whenever you see a ridiculously quilty quilt at a show, you know, one of the #1 questions I'm asked is, well, how much time did it take, or how much thread did it take, or whatever, and the answer is way too long and way too much thread. I don't keep track of how much stuff I use in quilts, or how much time it takes, because that would kind of make me crazy. But
this is how it's going to be all the way around. Just these back and forth arch shapes until I get this channel all the way filled, and then I'll probably go in and build up the edges of it just so that they kind of match that inside channel too. It really depends on how eager I am to get done with it. Still need to dye the fabric for the binding, so that way that's ready to go. So that's something else I have to start thinking about now too. It's been such a long quilt that I just never really worried about dyeing the fabric, and I don't quite remember what color of dye I used for the surface, so this is going to be interesting. I'm going to probably have to do a little bit of experimenting in order to try and remember what I did before.
So that's it. I actually sat down and stitched out all that remaining border section. It only took about 3 hours to finish everything up, and it wasn't too boring, but it was definitely one of those things where I kind of, you know, it was at the very, very end and I just want to be done with it, but it was worth it to finish it off so nicely. Finishing a quilt this big, you might think that it's going to make you just so happy and ecstatic and yay, whatever. Really, it's kind of anticlimactic. It's kind of like I've been working towards this for so long, and she's been on my mind and in my sewing room for so long. You expect to feel better when it's done, and sometimes you don't. Mostly, you know, I look at this quilt and I see where I made mistakes, or where I could have made a different decision and liked the quilt better. That's me being nitpicky, yes. But just talking with Josh, we've been talking about over the quilt and looking at it from all different angles for the last 10 minutes, and yes, she's beautiful, but if I call myself an artist, which I have some issues with that, but if I call myself an artist, I know that most artists have issues seeing the perfection of their work, or seeing their work as a whole piece and not what they could tweak or what could have been different. And I think that's just how it is. I think a lot of quilters have the same issue. It's not that I think she's bad or that I don't like it. It's that now that it's done, I wish I could go back 3 years and make some different decisions. And at the same time, I'm so happy it's over with so I can move on to something else. So it's relief more than anything else, and I am very happy with her. So there's all of that in one. Little rambly here, but hopefully you can understand that I am very, very happy to have her done, and I'll be blocking and binding her next. You can see she's not hanging well at all, but I'll block and bind, and she'll be hanging perfectly then, and then maybe you'll see her at a show sometime in the future. So that's it for this casual cam. Until next time, let's go quilt.